Hey guys, today I'll show you a vampire horror thriller TV series named Van Helsing Season 4. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Previously, the psycho killer Sam had become the fourth vampire elder and had a fight with the legendary vampire hunter Lillian, who was revived by Vanessa's drop of blood. At this moment, Sam was unmatched in strength. Even they both combined were no match for him. With a casual move, Sam threw Lillian out like an old Barbie toy. Vanessa stepped forward, attacking furiously, but Sam blocked her strikes with his horns. Soon, Vanessa was knocked to the ground. Sam ripped a stone pillar from nearby and smashed it down on her with force. Sam then lifted Vanessa, grabbing her by the head and blinding her with a brutal press. Lillian, sword in hand, rushed at Sam, slashing wildly at him. Although she cut as smoothly as if slicing through steak, Sam was immune to physical damage. Lillian managed to sever his neck with a single stroke, but Sam merely adjusted it back into place, unharmed. At this point, Sam was holding Vanessa with his left hand and Lillian with his right, leaving them powerless. Just as he was about to deliver the fatal blow, the divine messenger Oracle appeared and interrupted him. She insisted that Sam must spare one of the Van Helsings, a key component for unleashing the Dark Lord. However, by now, Sam had grown too arrogant and no longer wished to follow Oracle's orders. Such audacity was unacceptable to Oracle. Therefore, with a simple wave of her hand, Oracle sent Sam flying through the air like a Barbie toy. Undeterred, Sam wouldn't accept defeat. Taking advantage of the moment, Vanessa and Lillian escaped back into the labyrinth. Oracle then informed Sam that by releasing the Dark Lord, he could freely kill Vanessa. Eventually, Sam was persuaded. Meanwhile, Vanessa returned to the altar from earlier, only to find her sister Scarlett's body mysteriously missing. There wasn't time to ponder. She grabbed Scarlett's sword and a blood necklace from the table. Following her great-grandmother Lillian, they reached a dead end. Right then, Lillian recalled her mother's instructions, so she activated a magical circle on the wall, and they successfully escaped. Sam arrived just then, but could find no trace of them. Climbing atop the wall, he roared like a goose in anger. Lillian stepped out through a small door, marveling at the fresh sights outside, unaware of the current year. When Vanessa informed her it was 100 years later, Lillian was in utter disbelief that she was revived to a new era. Elsewhere, Julius returned to the safe zone and lured the bald vampire minion into attack range. The surrounding soldiers opened fire on the members of the vampire sisterhood, quickly felling them. The bald vampire seemed affected too. Seizing the moment, Julius brutally beat him. The soldiers took this opportunity to rescue the survivors. However, the sisterhood stood up once again. Julius took the survivor girl and headed for the exit, but the bald vampire was already waiting there. Behind them, the sisterhood commenced a massacre of the survivors. Julius confronted the bald vampire, but no longer a vampire, he was quickly defeated. The sisterhood leader Ivory took control of the situation, capturing the little girl while the bald vampire grabbed Julius, forcing him to watch. For the girl's safety, Julius knew exactly what the bald vampire wanted. He called him Master, which provoked the bald vampire to laugh uproariously, completely ignoring Julius. Seizing the chance, Julius pulled out a hand grenade and threw it at his feet. By the time the vampire realized, it was already too late. The bald vampire exploded so badly that his insides were a mess. Julius seized the opportunity and ran with the little girl towards the exit, but the soldiers outside unexpectedly refused to open the door. Seeing the vampire's miserable state, Ivory became enraged and set out to seek revenge on Julius. Doc, who was passing by outside at the crucial moment, snatched a pistol from one of the soldiers and managed to rescue Julius and the little girl. The soldiers who had captured Doc also arrived at the scene. When they saw Julius's wounds healing automatically, they captured him too. The scene shifts to a power man named Hansen, who was in charge of the safe zone and looked to analyze and test all vampires affected by Vanessa's blood. He then took the two onto a plane. He planned to abandon the Denver safe zone. Before leaving, he instructed the soldiers to immediately release nerve gas into the safe zone. Although Doc knew that the gas would have no effect on daywalkers, Hansen's intention was merely to kill the surviving humans inside. Soon, there was not a single living person left in the safe zone. Ivory recovered from the effects of the toxin, and the bald vampire was almost restored, but remained bald. The gentle Ivory even thoughtfully arranged a blood pack for him. Meanwhile, Oracle was intently drawing a magic circle on the ground. She inquired whether Sam had obtained the blood necklace, but Sam indicated that he had seen no one. Displeased with Sam's failure, Oracle launched a mass control spell. With her loud call, Ivory was even affected by her influence miles away. The spell was something unclear, but the gist of it was their plan to resurrect one of the Dark Lord's brides. After communicating, Sam was incredibly envious of Oracle's power. She told him that she could transform him into the new Dark Lord, but only if he obeyed her commands. Eager for power, Sam hesitated no more. Oracle then removed her disguise, revealing a beautiful face beneath her ugly appearance. She indicated that Sam could drink her blood, and she drank his in return. On the other side, Hansen brought Julius before a young girl named Violet, who is Hansen's adoptive daughter, though she was unaware of it at the time. From her fight, it was clear that Violet had a severe propensity for violence, so Hansen wanted Julius to be her trainer, since regular soldiers were too afraid to truly spar with her. And Julius was a perfect fit with his healing abilities. Vanessa poured out some blood, but miraculously it returned to its original state. This was a special energy unique to the Dark Lord, impervious to external forces. Meanwhile, Vanessa discussed with Lillian her time travel back to Hong Kong and how she had become bloodthirsty after being bitten by the vampire elder. However, Lillian could not understand why Vanessa did not change into a vampire like her ancestor Jacob did after being bitten. While they were discussing, several vampires suddenly appeared. Vanessa quickly dealt with one, but Lillian, perhaps having slept too long, struggled with such weak vampires. During the fight, she was slashed across the abdomen. Seeing the fresh blood, Vanessa's eyes immediately turned red. Just as Lillian was about to be bitten, Vanessa rushed over and bit the vampire, turning him back into a human. Lillian watched the unbelievable transformation, unsure of what kind of creature Vanessa really was. As Lillian's injuries worsened, Vanessa dragged a vampire over and told Lillian that she could temporarily turn her into a vampire to heal her injuries, then turn her back. However, Lillian, clearly having a strong sense of cleanliness, could not accept being bitten by such a filthy vampire on her pristine neck. Because of that, Lillian died shortly after. After burying her, Vanessa continued on her quest to find a way to stop the Dark Lord. At that moment, Julius was training Violet. With his extensive experience, Violet was no match for him. Julius told her the techniques she's learned were designed to combat humans, but against vampires, she would have died hundreds of times by now. Violet naturally was not convinced. She challenged Julius to demonstrate. With his vast experience with vampires, Julius quickly taught her a lesson, frightening her so much that her heart raced wildly. In her panic and loss of control, Violet accidentally slit Julius's throat. She was terrified by her own actions, but Julius quickly regained control from behind her. He explained this was the terrifying aspect of Daywalkers, and they had an abnormal healing ability. Violet was grateful for Julius's dedication to teaching her and promised to take him to a nice place that evening. The scene shifts to a group of survivors encountering the Daywalkers. A Daywalker stepped out the door, grabbed a person, and started biting fiercely. The others quickly fled, but soon a few more surrounded him. A girl stepped forward, pulled out a dagger, and began stabbing wildly. A man tried to hide in a car, only to be bitten to death the next second. Luckily, Vanessa showed up to flex her chainsaw, giving the group a vivid lesson and demonstrating how to kill a vampire by decapitation. As the girl stood up, Vanessa warned her that Daywalkers aren't that easy to kill. Just then, the Daywalker regenerated and stood up behind the girl, ready to bite her. Vanessa decisively delivered a chilling blow through his heart to his butt. After resolving the situation, Vanessa wanted to continue on her way, but they begged her to stay and fight together. The girl named Jack caught Vanessa's fancy the first time they met, prompting her to gift her own spare sword to Jack and advise her to take good care of herself. Meanwhile, Doc informed Julius that she had discovered that the blood of the Dark Lord and Vanessa's blood had almost identical genetic sequences, with only minor differences that might explain the mutations. After planning their next steps, Julius arrived as promised and met Violet, who took him to a place called Lower Town, a clear slum evident from its dirty, disordered appearance. They entered a bar where Violet hinted there might be a way out. Julius decided to look around, but when he returned, Violet had disappeared. At this time, Violet was walking alone on the street, thinking Julius was behind her. To her shock, she turned around to find a vampire instead. Despite her martial skills and the smooth handling of her cleaver, it was merely ticklish to a Daywalker. She tried to flee but was cut off by two more vampires emerging from an alley. Just then, Julius appeared in time to stop the two vampires, but Violet's heavy body was dragged away by another, who bit her using unbrushed teeth. The bitten Violet panicked, but the vampire suddenly vomited blood and turned back into a human. Apparently, Violet possessed a physique like Vanessa's, and when Julius came to check on her, her neck wound had healed. After returning, they all agreed to keep this incident secret. Julius found Doc to analyze Violet's blood, as her abilities resembled Vanessa's, suggesting a connection. Doc soon had results to share with Julius, but she was captured by Hansen en route, who had long known about Violet's extraordinary nature. Meanwhile, Violet, filled with confusion and doubt about the events, gradually drifted into sleep. In her dream, she arrived at a familiar altar, facing a sealed door with Vanessa appearing behind her. Suddenly, Violet awoke from her dream. In a world overrun by vampires, the only rule to survive is to eliminate the naive first and then deal with the troublesome children. The child in question had caused the death of a survivor because there was hardly any food left. Jack and her companion decided to go out in search of food, and the man knew of a supermarket not too far away. He repeatedly told another survivor girl to stay put and not to go anywhere, promising her that he would be back soon. The girl solemnly agreed, but once they left, she secretly followed them. Soon, the two arrived at the warehouse. As they opened the door, someone rushed to tell them that the survivor girl had disappeared. While they were still pondering this, vampires suddenly burst out from nearby. Jack, armed with a steel crossbow, supported the woman from the side until she ran out of arrows. Left with no choice, Jack took up her broadsword to confront the vampires head-on. Meanwhile, the man was entangled with another vampire. After a dangerous struggle, he couldn't break free and ultimately resorted to stuffing a grenade into the vampire's mouth. At that moment, Jack had just managed to kill 2 vampires. When her companion turned around, he was shocked to see the girl appear right there, with another vampire charging towards her. In desperation, Jack rushed over to intercept the vampire. Although she managed to wound the vampire, it knocked the sword from her hands. After a fierce hand-to-hand fight, Jack was inevitably no match and was bitten on the neck. She managed to drive the vampire away, but then begged her companion to end her life, as she didn't want to become a hideous vampire. However, the man couldn't bring himself to do it, knowing she was bitten while trying to save the girl. In the end, Jack took out a dagger and ended her own life. Watching Jack die because of her own reckless actions, one can only wonder what the girl must have felt. To be safe, they burned both Jack's and the vampire's bodies together. But suddenly, the man noticed that one corpse was missing. Suspecting that a vampire might still be alive, they followed a trail of blood and saw the vampire that had bitten Jack now turned into a human. Meanwhile, they heard noises coming from behind, and a person engulfed in flames crawled out of a trash heap. It was Jack who miraculously revived. After resting, Jack couldn't understand how she survived both a vampire bite and being burned. Moreover, her injuries had healed completely. She didn't know what to classify herself as anymore. The companion told her that her condition was almost identical to Vanessa's abilities. Maybe Vanessa could provide her with answers. Determined to understand the changes in herself, Jack set off to find Vanessa. In a forest, a group of vampire daywalkers were frantically running, seemingly scared of something. It was unusual to see vampires in such a panic. Suddenly, one of the vampires leaned against a tree and vomited black blood. The truth was that vampire hunter Vanessa was chasing them. Some of the daywalkers had turned back into humans. Now Vanessa realized how ridiculous her initial idea of killing the Dark Lord alone was, so she decided to walk towards the light to stop killing and seek redemption. Thus, she stopped resisting, spread her arms wide, and let the vampires bite her. In a dreamlike trance, Vanessa arrived in a mystic realm. A shadow flitted by her side, and curiously she followed it, leading her to a sealed door. There, she also encountered Violet and noticed a mysterious magic circle drawn on the ground. Suddenly, voices from the outside world pulled Vanessa from the vision. As she opened her eyes, she found herself surrounded by onlookers. With a swift kick, she knocked the spectators to the ground, only to realize they were the vampires from before, now reverted to being human. They expressed a desire to join Vanessa in her monster hunting quests to level up, but she declined, preferring the solo adventure. After being bitten by a vampire, Violet seemed to unlock latent potentials within her, gaining enhanced speed and strength. When the lights went out, she discovered she had acquired night vision. Julius hinted at a certain connection between her and Vanessa, suggesting Doc might have answers. However, Julius knew Doc had been captured by Hansen. Violet, using some everyday supplies as a bribe, got past the guard only to find that Doc had been moved to somewhere else. At that moment, Hansen appeared, easily overpowering Julius, revealing he was no ordinary human. After knocking him out, Hansen locked Julius up too. Meanwhile, Axel was at a bar when suddenly his table was smashed by 2 drunkards. Amidst their quarrel, he learned of a strange woman in the woods who could turn vampires back into humans. Axel immediately suspected it could only be Vanessa. He was determined to seek vengeance for his dead lover, Scarlet. As Vanessa wandered the woods, she was unaware of the danger closing in on her. Axel fired several shots, hitting Vanessa. He was driven by grief over losing his loved one. His only desire was to kill Vanessa to appease Scarlet's spirit. Vanessa swiftly disarmed the machine gun and kicked Axel away. By the time he got up, Vanessa had already taken cover. She tried to convince Axel that she had changed and had more important things to do. Axel, consumed by rage, didn't care. When Vanessa re-emerged from behind a tree, Axel drew a knife and attacked, but Vanessa was no longer the same. She continued trying to calm Axel, but his anger had taken over. In a final altercation, Axel unintentionally stabbed himself with his own knife. Vanessa rushed to check on him, and at that moment, Axel turned the knife on Vanessa, stabbing her in the heart. As she lay dying, she tried to convince Axel about Scarlet's matters, asserting she had done her best. Nevertheless, Scarlet chose to sacrifice herself. Now all they could do was hoping Scarlet's death would have meaning. Eventually, Axel forgave Vanessa, and the two embraced, weeping together like two giant babies. Before departing, Vanessa handed Axel a map, telling him that following it would lead him to her. The scene shifts to two figures entering the headquarters of the Vampire Sisterhood. Ivory was about to intervene when she suddenly found herself immobilized. It was Oracle, now sans her disguise, and Sam, who even with glasses held a certain charm. It turns out they were here to resurrect the Dark Lord's bride. Several members of the Sisterhood took out daggers and sliced open their palms, letting their blood flow to the ground to form a circle. Led by Oracle, they chanted ancient spells. In no time at all, the coffin lid could no longer contain what was inside. A withered hand suddenly burst forth. This grotesque old lady they revived was the Dark Lord's third bride, Michaela. After replenishing her strength with fresh blood, she asked Ivory why so few had come to greet her. Ivory honestly replied that the Sisterhood's numbers had dwindled to just these few, which infuriated Michaela. It turns out Michaela was the former leader of the Vampire Sisterhood, and she had entrusted them with an army before her slumber, and now only a handful remained. She then turned her gaze to Sam, feeling that the scholarly man was unfit for the role of a vampire elder. She grabbed Sam by the throat and, feeling his head, immediately learned of his past. Michaela was pleased with someone whose joy was built on the pain of others, so she gave Sam a passionate French kiss, making him feel revitalized. Soon after, while Hansen was reading, a soldier reported someone wished to see him. At the gate, the unimpressive Sam arrived by car accompanied by Oracle and Michaela. What connection they all had was yet to be revealed. Elsewhere, Violet quietly opened the door and was met with a horrifying sight. Sam lifted a white cloth to reveal a woman, bound and turned into a human feast, lying quietly on the table. The two beside her began to drink from her hands. To her shock, Violet's highly respected father had also joined the vampires, indicating that Hansen might be a vampire elder too. After Sam and the others arrived, the three held a meeting at Hansen's place. They discussed the current situation, believing that only by resurrecting the Dark Lord could vampires control the world. The key to all this was finding Vanessa first, as the blood necklace she possessed was the key to opening the Dark Passage. Oracle had ordered the Sisterhood to capture Vanessa alive. They watched Violet fight and discussed whether Hansen training her this way might lead to her following in Vanessa's footsteps, given that Violet was merely a sacrifice. Due to Julius's disappearance, Violet was unsatisfied with her current training partners. She sneaked into the lab to look for clues about Julius, but found a document instead detailing a research record. It's then revealed that long ago, after the disappearance of Vanessa and another, Hansen scolded the nanny responsible for watching the children. However, the nanny was not flustered and had a backup plan. When Vanessa was young, the nanny extracted and preserved her ova. Now, with enough male essence, she could continuously produce more Van Helsings. After undergoing the baptism of the Dark Lord's blood, only 2 cells survived, and they were Violet and Jack. With a heart full of questions, Violet wanted to ask her father what was going on, but instead saw him feeding on blood. Sam also noticed the disturbance outside. Violet panicked and ran out while Sam appeared at her hiding spot, leaving Violet terrified and hiding, barely daring to breathe. At the same time, Jack found Vanessa in the woods. After telling her about her own changes, Vanessa instinctively knew there was some connection between them. Meanwhile, Violet was packing her things in her room, no longer daring to stay there. Just as she left, Sam had already caught up. After a friendly conversation with the guards outside, Violet smoothly left, but by then, Sam had already set his sights on her. Vanessa was walking with Jack through the woods, but she seemed drawn to something. Coincidentally, they arrived at a cave entrance. Inside, they discovered it was the place from their visions. Suddenly, Jack sensed someone nearby and, without looking, fired an arrow, hitting the escaping Violet, who was also her sister. Calmly, Violet removed the arrow, and her wound quickly healed. Witnessing this, Vanessa realized the person before her must also be deeply connected to her. At that moment, Violet also saw Vanessa, whom she had met in her visions. Meanwhile, Sam followed Violet to this location. Oracle found him and slapped him for acting without following orders. Sam had initially planned to go solo, believing that finding the necklace and Vanessa would allow him to merge with the Dark Lord. However, Oracle informed him that without his magic circle, he could do nothing. Desiring great power, Sam pleaded with Oracle for help. At this time, Violet also told Vanessa that her father Hansen was originally a vampire, and she suspected that she and Jack were not biologically related sisters, as she found in the records that they were conceived from sperm donated by the army. Vanessa then revealed that she was also born in a lab, possessing half-human, half-vampire lineage. From Violet and Jack's behavior, it was clear their lineage was similar to Vanessa's. Suddenly, a sound came from a distance. Vanessa went to check and found under the cover of dead leaves, handprints embedded on both sides of a pool, similar to those of the unsealed elders. To verify whether they were indeed from the Van Helsing family, Vanessa asked them to place their hands in them. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, and as Vanessa grabbed their hands, a white light appeared out of nowhere, shooting straight into the sky, releasing powerful energy that startled Sam and Oracle nearby. At this moment, they all entered a vision. Vanessa and Violet appeared in the same place, but Jack was missing. Jack woke up elsewhere without her weapons, trying to find her way back, but a voice suddenly appeared, continuously calling her name. Influenced by the voice, she approached it and eventually arrived at a sarcophagus from which the voice was emanating. Vanessa came to an ancient and elegant room where a man suddenly appeared behind them. Vanessa instinctively thought he was her ancestor Jacob, but the man denied it, revealing he was Jacob's brother from the same Van Helsing family. He had thought his descendants would come bearing a weapon capable of destroying the Dark Lord. However, Vanessa merely mentioned that they needed to find a necklace and the family's ancient tome. Upon opening the book, the ancestor discovered that the 3 most crucial pages had been torn out. He asked Vanessa about the whereabouts of the pages, but she had no specific information since the book had been through centuries and she was unaware of what exactly had transpired. The ancestor was visibly dejected, feeling all his efforts had been in vain. He revealed that in the past, when he was aware he couldn't defeat the Dark Lord after Jacob had been bitten, he chose to seal himself away with the Dark Lord, waiting for his descendants to find the true method of his destruction. Now, he informed Vanessa that only the blood of Van Helsing's descendants could unlock the seal. Meanwhile, Jack had arrived at the sarcophagus. As she pushed the lid open, a swirl of black mist drifted out. Simultaneously, the candles in the ancestors' room snuffed out, signaling that the Dark Lord had been awakened. The smoke slowly wrapped around Jack's body, leaving her too terrified to move. To their shock, the ancestor realized the Dark Lord had escaped and that Jack had found the place. So he instructed Vanessa to find those 3 pages of the vampire diary to learn how to annihilate the Dark Lord, emphasizing that Violet and Jack were of Vanessa's bloodline, before forcefully returning them to reality. Upon waking, Jack and Violet realized they were Vanessa's children. Before they could celebrate, a familiar song reached their ears, indicating that Sam and Oracle had also arrived. Vanessa told her 2 daughters to leave as she confronted Sam with her sword. Oracle effortlessly immobilized the sisters with a wave of her hand, slamming Jack against a column and then Violet against a stone wall, knocking both unconscious. At this moment, Vanessa and Sam were fiercely wrestling their muscles. Vanessa's sword was accidentally hooked away by Sam's ram horns. Seizing the moment, Sam delivered a devastating blow, almost causing Vanessa to vomit her dinner. He then dragged her to a crucifix and impaled her upon it. Vanessa convulsed in agony while Sam laughed triumphantly, believing he had finally defeated Van Helsing. Meanwhile, Oracle calmly drew a magic circle, initiating a summoning ritual. Sam took the blood necklace and Oracle extracted blood from Vanessa, pouring it into the circle. She instructed Sam to drink the Dark Lord's blood. Despite Vanessa's warnings that he was merely a pawn, Sam drank it down in madness. The empty bottle was tossed aside, only to refill with blood. As a brilliant light emitted from Sam's chicken chest, the Dark Lord was poised to return to the human realm. The black mist before Sam gradually formed a figure, and it was none other than the Dark Lord herself, a female villain much to everyone's utter surprise. She blew a French kiss to Sam with affection, and with that, Sam completed his shady mission, vanishing without traces of his smell, leaving behind only a ram's horn. It turns out Oracle was the Dark Lord's first bride. From a young age, she guided Sam toward darkness, all to prepare a vessel for the Dark Lord's rebirth. However, the Dark Lord was far from pleased, wondering why only one of her 3 brides had come to greet her glorious resurrection. Oracle quickly diverted her attention, saying that she brought her a different gift, the last descendant of Van Helsing that would be capable of killing her. The Dark Lord approached Vanessa, puzzled to find her own blood flowing in Vanessa. However, that was of no importance. Upon learning that Violet and Jack were also of Van Helsing's lineage, she planned to use their blood to herald her glorious arrival. But Vanessa would not allow her children to be endangered. She feigned subservience to the Dark Lord and promised to personally deliver the blood. Vanessa approached Violet, stabbed herself with a knife, and handed her the necklace. She instructed Violet to find those crucial 3 pages and to escape at the first opportunity. The Dark Lord was very pleased with Vanessa's performance, happy to include her in her harem. At that moment, she opened a portal to the dark world, intending to unleash hellish powers to rule the entire living world. She beckoned Vanessa to join her, merging with the darkness. Just as the Dark Lord was about to transform Vanessa, Vanessa revolted, and together they plunged into the dark world. The energy wave in the pool dissipated, and the portal closed immediately. Oracle saw the Dark Lord sealed once again and knelt beside, crying inconsolably like an old baby. Meanwhile, Jack and Violet regained consciousness. She instructed Violet to take the book and necklace and leave while she stayed behind to cover their retreat. She fired several arrows, engaging Oracle in a standoff. Finally, Jack successfully shot Oracle in the head. Violet escaped the altar with the book and necklace. In the ancestor's room, he paced anxiously until suddenly the room was filled with light and the candles were relit. He knew there was still a chance for this world. The scene flashes back to centuries ago, revealing that Hansen was actually Jacob's loyal assistant. One day, Jacob, still a vampire hunter back then, sent Hansen to fetch medicine while he needed to record information about defeating the Dark Lord. After Hansen left, Jacob slit his palm, smearing the blood over the text, which slowly disappeared. When Hansen arrived at the pharmacy, the shopkeeper seemed to recognize him. Hansen urged him to hurry, but he soon realized that the shopkeeper had long been dead, and standing before him was Oracle. Without further ado, Oracle transformed him into a vampire. Returning to Jacob's residence, when Jacob asked what had happened, Hansen bit him, plunging him into darkness. Jacob asked Hansen to kill him, but Hansen had already achieved his goal. While still conscious, he tore out 3 pages from the vampire diary and hid them. Returning, he told Oracle that Jacob had been transformed. For his contribution, Oracle granted him power. This was Hansen's past. Now he watched Violet fighting Oracle, praying fervently for her to escape quickly. At that moment, Michaela also came looking for him. Now they knew that the plan to rescue the Dark Lord had failed. Everything was back to square one, and since the 4th vampire elder was no more, they had to change their rescue plan. At that moment, Jack had already been captured by Oracle. However, instead of killing her, Oracle branded her arm with a dark mark using a red-hot iron. Meanwhile, Violet was jolted awake by the sound of gunfire. When she went to investigate, she saw her boyfriend being chased by daywalkers. She informed him that decapitation was the only way to kill them. Armed with a scimitar, Violet easily dispatched the daywalkers and they returned to the train station. There, she explained everything to her boyfriend, who suggested they elope and live a carefree life together. However, Violet disagreed, as she had more important things to do. As they were talking, Violet suddenly felt a severe headache and passed out, her eyes rolling back and her body freezing. Awakened by her boyfriend's loud calls, she realized that the area was no longer safe. She led her boyfriend outside, but on their way, Violet noticed an unusual sight. A clock appeared in front of them. She knew it was something extraordinary, but her boyfriend urged her to return to the safety of the train station. Violet refused, and in a horrifying turn of events, her boyfriend began to slit her throat repeatedly, trapping her in a death loop that felt all too real. When she finally came to, she could no longer distinguish between illusion and reality, asking her boyfriend to keep his distance. Back at the headquarters of the Vampire Sisterhood, Jack was being controlled by two women whose eyes were rolled back. It turned out they were the ones who had been keeping Violet in the illusions to buy time for Ivory and the bald minion to capture them. Meanwhile, Hansen, hidden in the corner with his eyes also rolled back, played an unknown role in this. Violet and her boyfriend stepped outside again. This time, next to the clock, a painting appeared, triggering fragmented memories. Violet knew she had seen this painting before and suddenly drew her gun, demanding her boyfriend reveal a secret known only to the two of them. When he couldn't answer, Violet realized that the man in front of her was not her real boyfriend. So she shot him as shit in the head, breaking free from the illusion. Jack also woke up and noticed Hansen hiding nearby. Violet, now fully alert, pointed the gun at her boyfriend again, confirming his identity. Once satisfied, she relaxed a bit. Just as they were about to leave, Ivory and the bald minion caught up with them. Violet charged first, and in a fierce fight, her boyfriend was knocked down by Ivory while Violet shot the bald minion away. Ivory picked up a sword to finish Violet but was shot down by her. Finally, Violet brought down a chandelier, crushing the two adversaries. They escaped just in time to encounter smugglers. After knocking her boyfriend unconscious for his safety, she instructed the people on the vehicle to look after him while she continued her search for the missing pages. On the other side, Hansen found Jack again. He wanted to help her escape because he had hidden those 3 pages himself. However, Jack was now unsure whether she should continue to trust her vampire father. Meanwhile, the two brides, Oracle and Michaela, were discussing how Violet could not possibly have broken free from their illusions on her own, as she was only a mortal. They realized simultaneously that someone must have helped her, and the only capable person around was Hansen. They also noticed that the place where Jack was confined was now empty. An infuriated Michaela grabbed Hansen and flung him miles away like a Barbie toy, while Oracle screamed frantically in a chicken voice, lamenting yet another failed plan. In a heavily guarded school, several survivors are transported weekly to spend the rest of their lives in fear. The ruthless headmaster of the school was negotiating prices with the hunting team leader. The price had to be doubled this time because their target, Violet, was incredibly capable. The headmaster approached Violet, snatched the blood necklace from her, and advised her to perform well later, warning her not to let herself be a losing investment. The guards took Violet to a prison filled with cameras. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind. Turning around, Violet saw that Julius had also been captured after his escape. After catching up, Violet shared with Julius that Vanessa had voluntarily sealed the Dark Lord to save them, but she believed Vanessa was not dead. Their immediate priority was to retrieve the blood necklace and escape. Meanwhile, Jack, who had been secretly released by Hansen, was also making her way to find Violet. Just then, a car drove by, and she quickly hid. The driver was Axel, who was following the navigation given by Vanessa to find her. However, not long after, the navigation arrow pointed directly behind the vehicle. He immediately got out to check, and as he approached another car, the pointer stopped moving. With nowhere to hide, Jack jumped out and confronted Axel. After Axel explained he was a friend of Vanessa and was following her navigation to find her, Jack lowered her guard. She told Axel that Vanessa had been dead, which baffled Axel because the pointer was still moving after all. Jack suggested that it might be because she herself was Vanessa's daughter, leaving Axel utterly confused, not knowing when Vanessa had such a grown daughter. In the spacious lobby, the atmosphere suddenly electrified as pulsating music blared through the speakers. The headmaster made a grand entrance. He warmly welcomed today's main attraction, a towering figure standing at 6 feet, known simply as the Butcher. Julius was already trembling with fear, thinking it was his turn, and began warming up with some fist pumping. However, the headmaster announced that today's challenger was actually Violet. Julius tried to intervene, only to be subdued with a stun baton. The Butcher clearly underestimated Violet, believing that he could take on 10 of such a youngster. The headmaster spun the wheel of weapons, and a double-headed scimitar was selected and thrown into the arena. It was clear that whoever grabbed the weapon first would have a significant advantage. Violet dashed for it, but the Butcher used his imposing frame, blocked and grabbed her. Seizing the opportunity, Violet landed a swift kick, allowing her escape. After enduring several rounds of rough handling by the Butcher, Violet finally seized the weapon, plunged it into a drain, then cunningly maneuvered the Butcher onto the blade, claiming victory. She demanded the fight be stopped, but the headmaster threw down another weapon, insisting that decapitation would be the real victory. Violet flatly refused. Just then, 2 guards came and controlled Violet, with another one decapitating the loser. The epic showdown saw the bald minion battling Julius and Violet facing off against Ivory. Both sides were formidable, leaving the outcome uncertain. Meanwhile, Axel and Jack followed the GPS and arrived outside the prison. As they were plotting a stealth entry to rescue Violet, Ivory and the bald minion also showed up at the prison, making any elaborate plans unnecessary. They could simply take advantage of the situation. The headmaster was busy hosting another match, with Violet and Julius as the contestants. The weapon of choice this time was an axe, which was immediately thrown into the fray, and the two began their battle. At the same time, Ivory and the bald minion had dealt with the outside guards. Axel and Jack quietly followed. Julius signaled to Violet that it was time to act. Understanding the cue, Violet used Julius's back as a springboard, leaping up and fatally striking a guard, while Julius dispatched another. After the two regrouped, Ivory also arrived, and Julius saw the bald minion in disbelief, battered yet alive from the explosion. Old grudges resurfaced, and Julius was determined to finish the bald minion. After emptying his bullets, Julius dropped his weapon, challenging the bald minion to a man-to-man duel, although the bald minion hardly qualified as a man anymore. As Axel and Jack caught up, Violet instructed Jack to seize the headmaster and retrieve the blood necklace while she confronted Ivory. Meanwhile, Julius had the bald minion on the ropes, demanding he admit his defeat. The bald minion, clinging to his last ounce of strength, was swiftly beheaded by Julius. Seeing the bald minion dispatched, Ivory was fueled by rage, slashed at Violet's neck and leapt down to seek revenge on Julius. Exhausted and defenseless, Julius was on the brink of death when Violet suddenly appeared behind Ivory and bit her, causing her to spit out black blood and eventually revert back to human form. While Axel and Violet were still at a standoff with the headmaster, Julius and his group had finished the battle. Axel saw the transformed Ivory and comforted her, saying they were on the same boat. The back-to-human Ivory then vowed to serve the Van Helsing family. While the headmaster was continuing his live stream from the room, the others unleashed a barrage of bullets at the door outside. Julius broke through the wall and delivered a fatal blow to the headmaster, and the blood necklace once again found its way into Violet's hands. Violet and Jack picked up their phones and hurled verbal grenades at the viewers of the live stream, unaware that among them was the President of the United States. The scene shifts to Hansen, who had been drawn into a hallucination, enduring a mental invasion by Michaela and Oracle. A voice persistently tempted him to reveal the hiding place of the 3 pages of the Vampire Diary, but Hansen clung to his last shred of clarity, vowing never to betray again. Under relentless pressure from the Dark Lord's 2 brides, Hansen finally unleashed his power, sending them flying like outdated Barbie toys. Mocking their old age and ugly faces, he suggested they stay out of sight to avoid ruining the concept of beauty. Enraged, Michaela moved to finish him but was stopped by Oracle, who advised keeping Hansen alive to lure out his daughter and find a way to unseal the Dark Lord. She then took him to their base. Meanwhile, Violet and Jack disagreed on their next move. Violet insisted on retrieving the 3 pages, while Jack wanted to rescue Hansen. They decided to split up, with the humanized Ivory accompanying Jack back to the altar, while Axel and Violet headed to the base for the pages of know-how. When Jack and Ivory arrived at the altar, they saw Michaela in a sacred ceremony where she donned a pure white gown and lay on the altar, her limbs tied. She felt nothing unusual as she began to chant the spells, officially starting the summoning ritual, but they found no trace of Hansen. Ivory explained that it was an ancient ritual where powerful vampires would remove and hide their hearts before a great battle to avoid death. She deliberately made noise to distract a Sisterhood member, allowing Jack to bite her and revert her to human. Ivory then instructed her to join them in eliminating Michaela before sending her back to the ritual. The converted member then expertly extracted Michaela's heart with a dagger and placed it in a wooden box. Weakened, Michaela needed to drink blood to regain strength, but the converted member intentionally spilled the blood on the ground. Jack and Ivory then attacked, but they were no match for the remaining members of the Sisterhood. Just as Michaela was about to kill Ivory, she suddenly collapsed. Jack had plunged the dagger into her greasy heart. Ivory, seizing her broadsword, stylishly decapitated Michaela. At the same time, Oracle at the base sensed Michaela's death. She was both relieved and worried. Relieved that her position was finally secure, yet worried about potential dangers to herself. Thus, she quickly made a decision. It was time for her to take action. Elsewhere, the car was stopped and checked. When the car door was opened, a foul stench immediately hit the soldier in the face, and the flies inside buzzed chaotically. The smell was so overwhelmingly bad that the soldier didn't even want to check further. He quickly told Axel to drive away. Hidden in the car were Violet and Julius. At this time, Jack, having dealt with Michaela, had reversed all the Sisterhood members back to humans. Jack also learned that her father had been taken to the base. The Sisterhood was now willing to help Jack. Meanwhile, Violet and the others had discussed their next steps inside. Axel pretended to take Julius out to collect a reward, while Violet went to retrieve the 3 pages. Suddenly, Julius rushed forward, prompting a soldier to shoot him to death, which greatly angered the general because he still needed Julius to find out the whereabouts of the 2 missing sisters. At this moment, Violet in the corridor saw Oracle, who had transformed into the president's secretary. After the secretary returned to her room, Violet made her move. However, Oracle had already noticed her. Julius, who had been in the morgue, came back to life. He sneaked out and went to Doc's lab, searching through the documents in his hands to find out where she had been taken. Violet, now in the office, saw a familiar pendulum clock and the painting from her hallucination. She flipped the painting over, cut open the canvas, and found the 3 hidden pages. Just as she was about to leave, as if guided by some unseen force, she ended up in a warehouse and in a lab where a man was imprisoned. It turns out to be Hansen, who had reverted to his original form. Violet initially didn't believe him, but Hansen had to recount stories from when Violet and Jack were young before Violet finally confirmed that this unbelievably young-looking man was indeed their father. At the same time, Axel was captured by the general, who showed Axel a photo of him with the 2 sisters and demanded that Axel reveal where the girl who could turn vampires back into humans was hiding. He was specifically there under the orders of the president. Just then, Julius had just knocked down a guard, allowing Axel to take control of the situation. Wanting to leave, they had to rely on the general, and they had no choice but to trust each other. When they brought the general out, they also saw Violet coming out with the young Hansen. After some explanations, Axel told the general that if he wanted to know more secrets, he had to follow them and leave the place. In the safe house, after waiting for a while, Jack and Ivory also arrived. Jack met her unbelievably young-looking father. Meanwhile, at the previous location, Oracle saw that Hansen had been taken away. She wasn't angry. On the contrary, she was happy because she needed the 2 sisters to open the gateway to the dark world. Afterward, Jack and Violet cut their palms, and as their blood slowly dripped onto the white paper, text gradually appeared, detailing how to vanquish the Dark Lord. However, the most crucial part was that the 2 of them couldn't understand the text on the paper. The only one who could understand it was still unconscious Hansen. To wake him up, Violet thought of transfusing human blood into Hansen to see if he could wake up. The only one available to donate blood was the general, who naturally disagreed. But once he learned that he was the only pure human there, he had no more objections. Violet swiftly inserted the needle, and the dying Hansen struggled to wake up. The 2 sisters hurriedly asked their father what the text on the paper meant. Slowly, Hansen raised his hands and placed them on the sisters' heads, pulling them both into a hallucination. This is the point in time when the vampire hunter Jacob had already been turned into a vampire, and his brother was sealed away with the Dark Lord. Upon seeing the mutated Hansen, the brother's wife knew everything must be connected to him. She drew a dagger, intending to kill him, but Hansen swore he would infiltrate the vampires and dismantle them from within. Just then, Hansen appeared before the 2 sisters and shared his journey over the centuries. He had constantly changed identities and researched various genetic potions. Despite many innocents dying because of his experiments, he was willing to bear the blame. Eventually, Hansen brought the 2 to their birthplace and revealed to them that they are the ultimate weapon. They are the next generation of Vanessa and Scarlet, combining all their strengths. Moreover, the blood of the Dark Lord has been infused into them. This not only protects them, but also enables them to destroy the Dark Lord with just one bite using their unbrushed teeth. Hansen emphasized that when faced with darkness, the 2 must make the right choices, just like Vanessa, Scarlet, and himself had to. The sisters then returned to reality, where they could now understand the text on the paper, detailing how to open the portal to the dark world and how to return. The blood necklace was the key. Hansen had already prepared a magical circle in the stadium. When moonlight hit the pentagram, the portal would open. However, Oracle would surely appear to stop them, and they had to deal with her first. After receiving this information, everyone pondered how to confront the powerful Oracle. At that moment, Hansen stepped forward with a detailed plan. But first, he needed to replenish his energy, turning everyone's gaze to the general who was baffled to realize he was there just to provide blood. Definitely a sidekick character in this drama. After replenishing, Hansen took action according to his plan and disguised himself as the general. He soon found Oracle, now disguised as the president's secretary, and informed her that he had captured Violet and Jack, urging her to interrogate them quickly. Without much thought, she followed the disguised general to a mysterious lab. Hansen opened the door and cautiously entered first. Once inside, Axel and another person quickly shut the door behind them, trapping everyone inside. Back to his original form, Hansen faced Oracle, who was not panicked, confident in her invincibility. Julius worried about Hansen inside, but Axel knew they couldn't intervene. Oracle tried to manipulate Axel through the glass, but Hansen revealed that magic couldn't penetrate the room. However, Hansen had overlooked that those inside were unaffected, leading to his tragic beating by Oracle, who was ready to send him to meet his maker. Meanwhile, the real general arrived at the stadium with Violet and others. Axel rushed over to warn them of Hansen's danger. By the time they arrived, Hansen had endured severe torture. Violet wanted to open the door but was stopped by Axel. Hansen pushed Oracle away, telling them not to worry about him, but he was strangled from behind, his neck snapped. Watching her father die before him, Violet vowed to kill the Dark Lord and settle scores. Jack, however, remained eerily calm, staring blankly at Oracle, seemingly undergoing some transformation. After everyone left, only Axel remained, watching over Oracle, who continually tempted him with illusions of his lover Scarlet, promising nights of delight. However, Axel's resolve was unshaken, completely ignoring her advances. Afterwards, Axel arrived at the gymnasium and informed Violet that the state of Oracle seemed a bit off. He suspected she had some tricks up her sleeve and suggested they postpone their plan. However, driven by a desire for revenge, Violet was unwilling to wait any longer. At that time, Jack was already setting up the altar, dripping her own blood around its perimeter. The two sisters proceeded to the center, pouring out the blood from the blood necklace and chanting a spell in unison, ready to open the portal to the dark world. Immediately, the barrier reacted, and a massive energy storm erupted. The sisters, holding hands, stepped into it, only for the storm to vanish as quickly as it had appeared. Anxiously, everyone awaited the outcome, but in less than a minute, the energy storm reappeared, violently ejecting the sisters' physical bodies. The group was baffled, not understanding what had transpired inside. Suddenly, Jack stopped breathing, while Violet began foaming at the mouth. It seemed that their souls were still trapped inside the dark world, where the surrounding walls seemed to sway with their breaths. Moving forward, they arrived at a cemetery where suddenly a voice, believed to be Vanessa's, began calling out to them. Violet impulsively pushed aside a sarcophagus, only to find a mummy inside. Following the voice again, they entered an empty room where the Dark Lord had been waiting. Violet attempted to stab her with a knife, but was effortlessly disarmed. The Dark Lord urged the two sisters to listen quietly as she revealed secrets unknown to them. Her gaze turned to Jack, who then sat down. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the president had arrived, seeing the unconscious Jack and instructing soldiers to move her. She then approached Oracle, now disguised as her secretary, and after failing to answer personal questions, the president confirmed that this person was not her secretary. She inquired from the general about how to kill Oracle. The only sure way to kill her was by beheading, but opening the door would make them no match for her, so the safest method was to keep her locked inside. Julius suddenly mentioned a place because he had seen in the archives that Doc was sent there by Hansen. This was likely a high-level laboratory that could help treat Violet and Jack. The general volunteered to go there with Julius and Axel. Back in the Dark World, the Dark Lord was revealing to them who their mother really was, but Violet refused to believe her bullshit. Meanwhile, Hansen walked past them and they followed. They learned that Hansen had fathered them under the orders of the Dark Lord, contrary to what they had seen, shaking Jack's belief. Violet still insisted that Hansen would never deceive them. When the Dark Lord grabbed Jack's hand and blood flowed onto a marked imprint, Violet realized something was wrong. She then woke up to find herself bound, struggling frantically as Jack also regained consciousness. The president asked her if she had eliminated the Dark Lord. She simply replied that the Dark Lord had left. The president, seeing Violet's agitation, ordered soldiers to administer a sedative. Soon enough, Violet was transported back to the Dark World, where the Dark Lord revealed that she had begun her plans long before Violet first saw the sealed door, claiming that the Vanessa she saw was actually her. Violet, in disbelief and anger, charged at her but was immediately suspended in midair by the Dark Lord, who then knocked the sisters unconscious. Later, the Dark Lord discovered a torn page on Violet and learned of a way to leave that sealed place. Elsewhere in a field of golden crops, Julius curiously sniffed some powder. Suddenly, Axel discovered a corpse. They mistakenly believed this crop field was the latest research achievement. Julius then felt unwell, and noises came from the bushes as a soldier was suddenly dragged in and thrown out dead as shit. Another soldier was bitten by a vampire, and the general shot his subordinate, knowing the bitten soldier was beyond saving. Axel and another opened fire, but the bullets had no effect on the vampire, whose muscles were bulletproof. After running out of bullets, the general pulled out a knife, determined to face the vampire, but as expected, he was bitten and ended his own life with a gunshot. Julius reloaded and managed to knock down the vampire, which then flew out and attacked Axel. Axel drew a short knife and managed to kill the vampire after a frantic struggle. However, afterward, they discovered that their wounds were not healing automatically. Meanwhile, Jack, who had just recovered, came to visit Violet and thanked her for letting her out from the dark world. As Violet watched her walk away, she was terrified to realize that the figure resembled the Dark Lord. Violet shouted in anger but without help. Soon after, Jack met with the president, who wanted to take her away from there. Jack asked if she was the leader, managing many humans, to which the president truthfully responded. Jack felt satisfied and mentioned she was extremely thirsty, which made the president realize something was wrong. She tried to run, but it was already too late, and she was bitten by the Dark Lord in disguise. Soon after, the transformed president met with the confined Oracle, and they had a mysterious conversation, possibly sharing a shady plan. Oracle inside knew that the president outside was actually the Dark Lord in disguise. Sure enough, the president ordered her men to release Oracle. Ivory tried desperately to stop this, but was killed by a neck twist from behind. Oracle managed to walk out smoothly. After everyone had left, Ivory revived. Just as the soldier was about to inject Violet with a sedative again, Ivory arrived just in time, chased the soldier away, and woke Violet up. The two ran out of the main gate. The transformed president was almost on the plane when Ivory fired a missile, which the Dark Lord easily deflected. At that moment, they were also attacked by surrounding soldiers and could only watch helplessly as the Dark Lord departed in a TikTok style. On the other side, the severely wounded Axel finally reached the research base, but the doors were tightly closed. Julius could no longer hold on and eventually passed out. Axel tried to revive him, but he himself also collapsed. At that moment, the overhead cameras captured both of them. Turning to Jack when she awoke, she found herself trapped in a sarcophagus. Despite her loud cries for help, no one responded to her chicken noises. This is where Season 4 of the drama concludes.